Demetrious Johnson, the 11-time UFC world champion, the man who the UFC tried to forget and bury, and the man who never got the credit he deserved. Well, maybe not until now. But yeah, it's official, guys. Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson has officially retired, leaving one championship as the reigning, defending champion. Yeah, he said he's officially done with MMA. He's just going to focus on jiu-jitsu tournaments now. So I just thought it was only right we go over his whole entire career and highlighting his best finishes and performances, because there's just so many. His highlight reel is insane. His resume may be a bit dry of big names and stuff like that, but this guy was doing stuff that will never be recreated again. It's a bit crazy how underrated he is, and he just needs to be recognized as one of the best ever to do it. If he's not in your top 4, there's something wrong. DJ started his amateur career in 2006 and then started his pro career in 2010, debuting on the WEC, which was the UFC before it was the UFC, fighting on the Aldo versus Faber card, taking on Brad Pickett, where he lost by unanimous decision, where he really struggled with the weight and size of his opponent, strictly or simply being in a weight class he didn't belong in. It was 135 bantamweight. There was no flyweight division yet. After that loss, though, he was able to put together a pretty good win streak, beating the likes of Miguel Torres, Hirofumi Yamamoto, Jamecio Page, and Nick Pace. Not really too many big wins there, but still a decent win streak. But then Mighty would face the biggest test of his career by far in Dominick Cruz at 135 still, because there's still no flyweight division, which really sucked for all those undersized guys at the time. But yeah, they both were just infants in their career at the time, and Dominick Cruz was able to get it done by unanimous decision. But this would actually be Demetrious' last fight at 135, dealing with that adversity, because the flyweight division would be created in 2012, and Demetrious would obviously move down to there. Left to deal with the loss after his win streak was ruined by Dominick Cruz. But this would not deter Demetrious at all, going on to not lose in the UFC for the next 8 years, going on one of the most dominant and impressive title runs in UFC history, beating the likes of Ray Borg, Tim Elliott, Henry Cejudo, Joseph Benavidez, John Dodson, and there's many more, but just such an incredibly stacked record when it comes to just quantity. But the quality is there in some of the wins, obviously, but this is still the best of the best that the flyweight division had to offer at the time. So yeah, you just had Demetrious dominating the division for almost a decade. It was crazy. He first won UFC gold over Joseph Benavidez by split decision, truly marking the beginning of his era. But looking specifically at his highlight reel, this guy was a fucking ninja, okay? In his rematch with Joseph Benavidez, he knocked him out cold with a right hand, perfectly countered. His jiu-jitsu was so dominant. It was definitely his strongest attribute at the time of his run, probably. He just had so many impressive submissions in his title run. And everyone knows his iconic Ray Borg finish. It's just so famous at this point. The body slam right into the armbar, just perfectly set up and perfectly executed, and he got the finish off of it. Like, it's one thing to try stuff like that in a fight, but to actually succeed with it perfectly, dude, that shit will never be replicated ever again. And then we obviously had his insanely impressive finish over Henry Cejudo with his Muay Thai knees up the middle, just destroyed his liver, made him fall to the ground and pound, ref steps in. That's probably his best performance. He just dominated Henry in that first fight. He was just so ahead of the curve at the time, it seemed, and he would outclass people on the feet and the ground. The only thing he struggled with was his size, but he's the Mighty Mouse, bro. That's his thing. He doesn't matter. He was just a truly well-rounded martial artist. Then, in his last UFC fight of all time, the end of his title run, Henry Cejudo, in their rematch, would beat him by controversial split decision, where lots of fans to this day still think that Demetrious should have got his hand raised. Honestly, if I was going to say what I think, I'd have to rewatch it super closely, but I've watched it like twice. Honestly, I think it could have went either way, but I'm biased. I like Demetrious way more, so I don't know. Now we're going to talk about DJ's relationship with Dana White and the UFC, because it was a bit of a rocky one. It was not perfect by any means. So it's no secret that Demetrious and the flyweight division as a whole was not the biggest draw back then. Some even argue if it is today. I think it is, but back then it was clear that it wasn't for whatever reason. But that basically ended up being the reason that Demetrious was traded and left the UFC forever, which is kind of fucked up, to be honest, because it's kind of the fans' fault that happened. Them just not loving him enough and appreciating his dominance. Now, leaving the UFC was confirmed by Demetrious to be his choice. He could have resigned, making shit money, and no longer was champion, so it was even less then probably. Or he could ask to be traded, which happened. He asked to be traded to the Asia-based One Championship promotion, where he went over and dominated just like he did in the UFC. So yeah, One Championship, go to promotion. I like it the second best next to UFC. It's pretty fun to watch the Muay Thai. Fucked up what happened to Mikey though, stripping him of the belt. That was stupid. But yeah, they agreed to trade an old retired Ben Askren to come out of retirement and fight in the UFC, get his chance. Yeah, they agreed to trade him for a prime reigning Demetrious Johnson. Yeah, such an L for the UFC. It's insane. And yeah, at the time, Dana made it very publicly aware at his disappointment and hatred for the flyweight division and their ability to sell no pay-per-views, including Demetrious. So he didn't like him. He wasn't a star in his eyes. While he also proceeded to not promote the division or promote Demetrious at all. This caused Demetrious to be severely under fucking paid. He was making like 50 and 60K for a lot of his title defenses, believe it or not. Yeah, at least 50 or 60 or 70% of his title defenses, he made that, which is just ridiculous. And yeah, Demetrious would publicly state his distaste and mistreatment by the UFC. But, I mean, he wasn't asking for much. He was just asking to be paid like all the other champions. Make the same as them, because they definitely weren't making this low of money. So this ended up being the sole reason that Demetrious took his business elsewhere and wanted to fight overseas and won championship for a change. And it seemed to be the right move for his career. Now, talking about his one championship run specifically, you could honestly argue he hit his prime here, I think, being tested by some of the best one had to offer. I do think he could have done a little more at one, been a little more active, but yeah, I guess this was the... I'm not that into one. I guess this is the best of the best at the time, but I'm sure there was a few names he could have fought. You know, he got some of the big ones at least, though. He debuted against Yuya Wakamatsu, submitting him in the second round. He then beat Tatsumitsu Wada and Danny Kingad by unanimous decision, earning himself a well-deserved title shot over the reigning champion, flyweight champion, Adriano Moraes. And facing much adversity after two non-stop back-and-forth rounds of war, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson was knocked out and finished for the first time ever in MMA history. Demetrious made a single mistake in getting dropped. I forget if it was a trip or he got dropped by a punch, but he was on the ground, tried to get up, caught a huge knee to the face since you can knee ground an opponent and won. And yeah, was knocked out. But this wasn't over, not in the slightest, because Mighty wanted this one back massively. He would then go challenge Rodtang in a special rule-type matchup where the first round was Muay Thai and the second was MMA, where Demetrious would submit him in the second round, showing his pure dominance with his jiu-jitsu once again. This would prove to be enough to earn his rematch against Adriano, where he would get his revenge back very sweetly, where Demetrious would knock him out very similarly to how Adriano knocked him out. catching him with a right hand, rocking Adriano, having him falling back, stumbling to the cage, hits the cage. Demetrious is edging towards him, very slow like a fucking snake or a mouse, and catches him with the most vicious knee to the chin I've ever seen. I think this is my favorite finish of all time. I think it is, because the dude, it was poetry. He literally KO'd him like exactly how he got KO'd, but better. Like, just showing how much of a GOAT he really is. And yeah, Demetrious would finally claim the one championship flyweight belt. Demetrious knew this wasn't over though. With the two being 1-1, a trilogy would be next. It would happen the following year, where Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson would fight in MMA for the last time ever. At least that's what he said. Defeating Adriano Moraes by unanimous decision, where he made it look pretty easy. Honestly, this performance was good, but the whole time Adriano seemed to not engage and just be kind of scared of getting knocked out again, which was a bit disappointing. Just a lot of failed clinches. It's still a fun fight, it being his last fight. You guys should go watch it. And yeah, that's Demetrious Johnson's whole entire MMA career, because it seems to be over now, sadly. Now, I personally think he's easily the most underrated MMA fighter of all time. Now, it does seem he is getting a bit more recognition now, especially by the real fans. And this is probably due to his YouTube channel's massive success. I watch all of his videos. He's just funny, and he's so smart, especially when he's talking about MMA. This dude's analysis are really good. You should go watch them. And yeah, I still hear all the time a bunch of casual fans not even having him in their top 5, which, bro, there's something wrong if he's not. Sorry. And I also have to play this fucking clip for you guys. Dana White reacting to Demetrious' retirement.
To see he retired from MMA competition last night. He might grapple a little bit. Obviously, inaugural flyweight champion. Just curious what you could say about him in retrospect, knowing he's not. I know he finished his career somewhere else, but what do you think about what he meant to the company, and do we see him in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I didn't know that. And yeah, no, listen, if you go back to when he was here, I was defending him from the fans,
right.
You know? So who's defended Demetrious Johnson more than me? Yeah, no, good for him. You know, incredible career he had, and yeah, I've never had a problem with Demetrious Johnson.
I think he might grapple and that sort of stuff, but no more MMA. Do we see him in the UFC Hall of Fame at some point?
Absolutely.
Love to hear it.
This bald motherfucking liar. You treated him like shit his whole entire UFC career. And maybe he's being honest about Demetrious going in the Hall of Fame, but you never know. I really didn't think that ever happened, but he said it would. So maybe he's telling the truth. And yeah, guys, that's the end of the video. I just thought this was a pretty good idea since the GOAT retired. You'll be missed, Demetrious. Missed massively, even though he ain't fought in like a year and a half. But he basically retired that night. This was just... His retirement was really emotional, man. It was really good. I loved it. Probably my favorite retirement of all time. Yeah. You'll be missed, bro. See you guys in the next one.